Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. I want to keep this intro short and sweet. Today, we are going to be looking at a little trio of Junji Ito books. I don't currently have them on me, which is strange. They're probably in my bag downstairs. But, if I recall the books we are looking at, I will correct myself if I am wrong. But we are going to be looking at Remina, Dissolving Classroom, and Smashed. I guess I'm feeling in a spooky mood. We are getting into spooky season. It's, getting towards the end of summer. The weather's beginning to change a little bit. It's always good. And I've been in also a real manga, graphic novel, like physically easy to read kind of mood, if that makes sense. It's going to be a bit until I have anything that's just like a standard prose. So, yeah. I don't really have much to say. We know I already love Junji Ito. I've covered him a couple of times before. So, yeah, short intro, probably a short video as well, or short-ish. And I will see you with some art stuff very shortly. I'm going to review these in the order that I read them. I can't see there being many callbacks when I'm doing this. This is a pretty simple, like, sort of low-key video, but maybe there'll be one or two, so it makes things easier, because I'm just sort of going through. I like to review as I've read, sort of thing. It just sort of means that there's a bit more... You get the experience that I would have had, kind of thing. Usually my longer videos, but this one's shorter. I'm rambling. Let's just get on. Oh, probable spoilers ahead. First up, we have Dissolving Classroom. So, this one is a collection of interconnected short stories following brother and sister duo Yuma and Chizumi. And despite all the weird shit, despite all the horror, I genuinely believe this is a story about the way that siblings are with each other. As a rancid younger sibling to a pair of long-suffering older siblings, but specifically a long-suffering older brother, there were many times during reading this book where I was just like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of just what siblings are like, just escalated to a point of horror. Sure, Yuma is always apologising because it increases his connection to the devil, but how many younger siblings are the cause of embarrassment for older siblings, meaning they have to apologise on their behalf? And this is definitely one of those where we see Ito's dark humour coming through. In one or two places, it's overt one-liners type of thing, but it's more so just a case of it's funny in the way that, like... Chucky is funny. It's nasty little freak behaviour embodied by a childish form. Like, look at this, for example. Sure, she's a demon. She is demonic. But, and there are plenty of genuinely terrifying panels within this. But, frankly, I think that any younger sibling, knowing that their elder has a guest over, they're going to cause problems on purpose. I would know. And look at her. That's exactly what's going on. The stance, the face, the everything. I genuinely love Chizumi. She's such a good character, both from that visual design aspect and the storytelling side of things. This is the most accurate depiction of that, like, weird girl behaviour taken to its unholy conclusion. She's kind of scrungly and bug-like. If you do like horror like Chucky or Mithrigan, then you'll love her too, I think. She falls in that very similar category of strange little beast. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. She's such a little creature of a character, and I love her, and she's very funny, and she's a little demon. There are moments where I was like, hey, don't do that. like, Chizumi falls in love, which I think is the penultimate chapter of this, or penultimate story. It's one of the later ones anyway, and she's like, oh, she is on her most rancid behaviour in that. And there were moments where I'm like, that's the point, it's a horror book. But it was like, oh no, don't you do that. Don't you do that little tee-hee-hee ass pose. Stop it. And there's great balance with Yuma, who, while still being an integral part of the horror, is far more of a kind of straight man, I guess. Where Chizumi's horror comes from her being feral, Yuma, for the most part, is far more grounded in how he's nasty. The book opens with him being the newbie at school and immediately apologising to everybody present, which sets you on edge from the beginning. He doesn't feel like the problem, though, especially set against Chizumi. Even when we learn about the deal with the devil when he was a kid, and even with the backdrop of him being able to dissolve people with these apologies, there is something of just like human level ability of villainy and nastiness with him. There are moments where, and it's very much worse when you know who's doing it, but like, he loves being beaten physically, and obviously there's nothing wrong with a bit of masochism, but it is freak behaviour from him in a different way. I'm not going to spoil that. And like, in particular, the way he manipulates women romantically in the second story, it does feel very grounded. Like, he just feels like a horrible man in that, who just so happens to be able to do literally devilish things. And, you know, I think there's something about the fact that he still pretends he's any better than his sister. He has that sort of superiority complex over her because I think because of the apology thing, perhaps. Even without the devil, he's a bit of a rotten bastard. Like, the devil is more like a means to an end and an enhancement for his bastardry. And of course, there's, you know, all the expected, what the fuck, freaky horror you would, you know, want from an Ito novel. I would say especially from Chizumi. She does give, it's usually scenes with her that give us more of the nasty horror stuff. The stuff that made my skin crawl was with her. There's both from Chizumi in Love. There's a moment where like she sort of got a boy pinned to his floor and she licks his face and the tongue isn't quite right. It's like really thick and ugh, that was really grim. And a point where her and Yuma are fighting and she runs her nails through his arms, and I do mean through, and that just like oh grim. And yeah, it's that like physical skin crawling reaction, and moments where it, like I was saying, where it's just like, hey, no, don't do that. Ugh. Like the licking the face and that little like tee-hee-hee pose where she's just being all cutesy, but you know it's like wrong. It's so good. And as always, there's those like page turn reveal moments where it's like the manga equivalent of a jump scare. Hello, Miss Lily. You're sitting directly in front of my screen so I can't see my script. What a good girl. I love the work that you do, baby. Where are you going now? Oh, you're toasty. You've been on the window. Thank you. I think this one might be... Actually, no, I think it definitely is my favourite of the collection that I've read for this video. And it's definitely up there for all-timers. Tomie is definitely my favourite. And Uzumaki is definitely also, obviously, a contender. And they are hard to top. But I love seeing the more humorous side of Ito's work. And so much about this book ticked the boxes of what I look for in horror. I might have to see if I can get my own copy of this one, actually. Because I did genuinely enjoy it. Hey, Zelda, can we stop that, please? Zelda. That's enough. Thank you. Up next, we have Smashed. This is another short story collection, though not everything in here is connected. Some are, and I didn't know going in that they surround an established character in Ito's work. I have since reserved a copy of Suichi, so I can get to know him a little better, but going into this, I didn't really know about him. I'd seen that character, but I didn't know his name. Oh, she flopping. Sorry, my cat is just, Zelda is just, the sun's out at the minute, so she's on the window and she's baking. She's having a lovely time. You okay, baby? No interest in me. There's birds outside. Wonderful beast. But yeah, I'd seen that character before. I think I saw a cosplay of it recently of somebody with Junji Ito. And oh, he's on my shoulder. Sorry. But it was like a, yeah, okay. When I looked it up, I was like, oh, I've seen this character before. But I knew nothing of them. So, yeah, like I said, I've reserved a copy of that from the library. And actually, I've reserved a bunch more Ito stuff. So, I'm sure that'll be out at some point soon, but who knows? I need to find out how. I know as I was scripting this yesterday, I mean, yesterday for me, not for you, but as I was scripting this yesterday, I had a couple of them come in. One of them I couldn't remember if I'd read before, so I just reserved it anyway. It's 85p, I think, so like, whatever. But that was Fragments of Horror. I was pretty sure I had, but anyway, I had 2 come in yesterday. I definitely have at least 2 more. I think 3. But, you know, also just in general, I've been on a bit of like borrowing and reservation marathon recently. Remember when I was like, oh, I need to read through my actual shelf and not get like too hard on getting trapped in just getting library books over and over again and forgetting my bookshelf exists. Anyway, Smashed short story collection. It's a real mix. Like, thematically and all that stuff. It's not my favourite of the stuff I've read in general, but by no means did I ever find myself not enjoying what I was reading. It is a very good book, just in the milieu of other Ito novels that I've read. It's not my most favoritist, which I think is fine. It's on par with the expectations of an Ito book. I had fun. I was creeped out. That being said, let's talk about it. Well, some of it. There are 13 stories in here, and I'm trying to keep this video semi-short. There are, like I said, 3 Suichi stories. 2 about a haunted house and 1 about a family pet, that being a cat. And I had my thoughts at the end of the second, with the child Suichi waking up to everything having been a dream, but it's one of those where it likely makes more sense given that Suichi is an established character, and I believe he is the younger character we see at the end of the second haunted house story and in the cat story. I believe he isn't an adult in the established stories in the book about him. And I think this little kind of trilogy tells me that my favourite kind of Ito is where it's connected short stories. We just talked about Dissolving Classroom, and Tomie is just my all-time favourite. I got so engrossed in these stories. There's a cultish element to the haunted house stuff, with Suichi in control of the rest of his family, using them as tools in his wicked game. They've got so much packed into a pretty short space without them being overloaded. I will say, there is a character in the first of these 3 that looks like Bobby Hill to me, and I couldn't unsee it. My usual complaint with Ito is that a lot of his women do look pretty similar, unless they've become sort of wretched and gross. And I do stand by that. I love his stuff, but a lot of the women are hard to discern from one another sometimes. But I will take that over this child that looks like Bobby Hill, because look at him. What else am I meant to see here? If not actual Bobby Hill, Julia's Bobby Hill, if you watch Drawfee. Listen, maybe I'm just tired and I'm losing my mind, but to me, that's just Bobby Hill. Anyway, the third story in the trio has many of the same characters, but isn't inherently tied to the story told in the first two, by the way. But I do love it nonetheless. Like the way that Dissolving Classroom has that, like, this is just sibling dynamics, but worse. Colin the cat has a lot of just normal cat behavior, but more nasty. And is in, like, not nasty as in horrible to somebody, nasty as in, like, ugh. And I love that. Ito is a cat person at heart and understands perfectly that they are both ranted little demons, but also perfect sweet babies who can do no wrong. All that wrapped up into one perfect little body. And I can't remember if I reserved the book he has about his cat, but I have been meaning to read that as well. While we're here, shall we have a little look? Because I do know my library login, and it will probably make me log in because I haven't been on it in a second. There we go. Just give it a second to come in. Okay, so I don't have that one reserved. I will probably have to do a special reservation for that. But I was talking earlier about the other ones that I have reserved. So I have Suichi, Venus in the Blind Spot, and Shiver reserved. I also have No Longer Human, but I'm going to do... I know I mentioned this later on in my script, but I'm going to talk about it now. I do want to do that as its own video, rather than talking about that in the milieu of the other stuff, because it is different. And I had a couple come in yesterday, which were Tombs and Geo. I don't know if I'm going to talk about all of the stuff that I have reserved at the same time beyond No Longer Human, but I don't know how I'm going to talk about these, if I'm going to do sort of like a couple all together like I did today, maybe one just big sit down video. And then I also have Tomie in. That's not for review, that's just because I want to read it again. I should probably get my own copy. I have put my script away. Where have you gone? There we are. Where are we? Yeah, we're talking about cats. Yeah, so I need to reserve, probably do a special reservation on his book about his cats, or I'll just buy it. Because it's one of those things I think a big reason I do so much reservation at the library and like borrowing is I am genuinely always nervous about spending money and then finding out I didn't enjoy it. I have a couple of books that I've got where I'm like, yeah, I got them for cheap, like second hand, where I go, I don't mind spending a little amount knowing that I might not enjoy it. Usually romance stuff or like weird stuff. There is one that I want to get to at some point. I might do that soon and just say bugger it. It'll probably be after Halloween because maybe I'll do some spooky stuff, maybe I won't. It'll at the very least be after I've got through all of my millions and millions of library books and other things that I have coming up. But yeah, anyway, Ito understands cats. I'm rambling. And like the cat in this is very cute, and I got very attached to him. And despite all of Colin's actions, he has done absolutely nothing wrong, and he is just a sweet little baby. He's so cute, and I'm so glad that nothing horrid happened to him. Like, Suichi is mean, but not violent towards the animals. Hello, Zelda. What are you doing? That's a choice. Right, hang on. And of the disconnected stories, I think my favourite has to be I Don't Want to Be a Ghost. It's got some of the best beautifully haunting visuals, which I always love, and the way I had so many little ew moments. And the main guy in this, I don't want to say this is karma for cheating on his wife, But this is karma for cheating on his wife. If I weren't in the library when I was reading, I would have been cussing this man out verbally. When I'm reading at home, yeah, I absolutely verbally respond to whatever I'm reading. It's cathartic. The way I speak in script sometimes is often how I speak when I'm reading books. If I'm reading a Bad Vet Book Club type book and I'm going, hey, what the fuck are you doing? I will probably be saying that to the book, either out loud or in my head, depending on where I am in any given moment. It's cathartic, like I say. I also had that feeling with the titular story, Smashed, which rounds the book out. Sometimes good horror is found by yelling at idiots who refuse to think about what they're actually doing. These people are so dense, and I do love the more cosmic element that overlooks the whole thing. The whole final story, not the whole book. And speaking of cosmic elements, let's move on to the final book for today, Remina. This book punched me in the gut over and over again, and I do mean that as a compliment. There were moments where it felt like I had genuine jump scares in this, and not in the usual Ito way. Usually with him, it's a case of expectation of something about to happen, you turn the page, and seeing something visually nasty makes you go, oh. But this played on a tender emotional level as much as expected fear, and I think that makes sense. This book is a cosmic horror, which means that much of that side of things is weird and hard to really wrap your head around, so there's often going to be something grounded within that to keep you invested. This is a one story book, so I had a good range for this video, and like I say, it hit me in ways I really just wasn't expecting. A huge theme of this book is the idea of celebrity and mob mentality, and how once an idea starts spreading, it sort of becomes contagious no matter if the idea is right or wrong. That sort of doesn't matter. And the mob, which we see right from the start, we see it at the start, and then we go back in time a bit, and then we sort of join that moment again later. But the mob is after a 16-year-old girl called Remina, and there's this one point where she and a little group are hiding away in a high-rise, trying to think of a way to get out unseen. One of the group steps forward to try to kind of reason with those outside. He's not a target. He is just with the target. They are literally just after Remina. He steps out and is immediately gunned down, and it genuinely did shock me. I think because I'm so used to being shocked by Ito in more visceral ways, that something like this was so much more effective when I was reading a lot of his stuff at the same sort of time. Like, when that happened, I had this weird like hitch in my throat, and that happened a couple of times throughout this book. I think that being able to do something simple and make it shocking is as much a testament to how incredible Ito is as any of the unnatural horrors found in something like a planet with an eyeball and a mouth, which is also found in this book. That planet also being called Remina. There is a connection there, and the planet ends up being named after her, after the girl I mentioned. And yeah, there is clearly some form of connection there. This is like I say, a cosmic horror, but that's never particularly stated outright. And the mob believe that her and her father are connected to this planet, and that the planet is going to kill them, but they can stop it if they kill the two people. It's grim. Like, the moment I think that affected me the most in this book was when Remina screamed, seeing what the mob had done to her dad. And everything is so grand in this book. Like, we do have a giant planet coming to destroy our own, and we have these moments where you can fly around the planet with such speed, but a moment where she's just yelling for her father, who is clearly already gone, it grounds you in an instant, and it made me misty-eyed. That's not surprising, but I don't get like that a huge amount in these books. It's more horror, like I'm horrified, terrified, I'm uncomfortable, but rarely do I get hit with wanting to start crying, and I did here. I mean, I know that will happen in No Longer Human, but that, like I say, it is a very different experience. I'm not expecting the same sort of things from that. But this is really different from anything else I've seen from him, and I love being able to see his range. I think there is an expectation with his work in terms of the way he gets your emotions. It's often stuff that's almost, if not completely, incomprehensible, and yes, there is plenty of that to go around here too, but there's something so very human within this that I truly appreciate seeing. And with that, I think we're about wrapped up. I once again fell deeper in love with Ito's writing. Truly, the more I read, the more I love it all, and I do have even more on the way, like I said. For the regular stuff, I will be reviewing like this. Probably not all of them at once, but maybe some of the, like, another little trio at a time. 3 seems like a good amount at once. But yeah, I definitely want to do No Longer Human on its own, because it feels right. Next video is just a little mishmash of stuff. Probably a bit more like this, just a bit more chill, a bit more overview, little feelings here and there, rather than any deep dive stuff. It's difficult to do that like all at once, but I think I'm still coming off of having done such a long video. I just want to chill out a little bit. But yeah, I'm just doing a bunch of manga stuff, graphic novels next week. I'm pretty heavy on that sort of thing coming up. I go through phases where it's all I really want to read, so here we are. It's like I say, it's physically easier to read, even if stuff like this is not mentally easier to read. Like, obviously there is just less text. But if you enjoyed your stay here, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to put your notifications on and all that other cringe stuff I'm supposed to ask you to do. Let me know what you're reading, as we are getting towards the spooky season. Are you already getting in the mood? Do you have any plans? Are there any authors that you always turn to when the months turn like this? Are you more of a go classic, you know, you're turning to your Frankensteins, your Draculas? Are you going to turn to somebody like Ito, a Grady Hendrix perhaps? I do enjoy his stuff as well, as I've talked about a few times. But yeah, I don't know if I will be intentionally reading spooky, apart from the Ito stuff I have. I don't know if I'll be intentionally be reading spooky stuff. I have like a fair amount of stuff coming up, and I don't think that any of it's really horror related. Not really. Well, one of them is in... that won't be the next video, the video after. One of them is a horror book in there. Comedy horror, though. And then one of them is about werewolves. And werewolves are inherently spooky. But I don't know when all that's happening. I should probably make a list and see what's... not doing dates, but just seeing what order everything's coming out in. Because it does help me keep my brain in the right place. Anyway, the most important thing is that I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right.